Welcome to the Riding in the Weeds podcast, where we tackle life's inevitable challenges, from navigating mountain bike trails to overcoming business hurdles and forging deeper connections with pets and people. It's easy to find yourself tangled in the weeds, but we're here to help with insights and strategies that'll get you out of the weeds. Our goal is to boost your performance in both sports and everyday life by sharing essential skills that we've learnt along the way. Through tales of our entrepreneurship journey, thrilling biking adventures, and fostering meaningful relationships, your hosts, Natasha, Lockey, and Ginny Branden, will guide you on a journey that's not only enjoyable, but also inspiring. Join us to gain confidence that you need to navigate the trails of life. Welcome to episode 49 of Riding in the Weeds. Today, Ginny and I are here with you, and we are talking about the gap. We mentioned this a little bit in our last episode. If you're stuck in the gap, you're going to feel like you are stuck in the weeds, regardless of whether it's something with your animals, if it's something with your mountain biking, if it's part of your life. If you've identified that you want something to change, and yet you are not actually taking the steps in order to get to the change, you're going to feel stuck. You're going to feel like you're not moving. And it's legit because you've identified that you want something different, but you're not doing anything. The gap and the gain, it's like the gain is where you're taking the small steps. And we're going to dig into the fact that you don't actually have to get to the ideal to be moving out of the gap. You just have to be taking steps. You just have to be moving. So join us as we dig into this topic and give you just a little bit of insight. So as always, we have the amazing Ginny with us, who is our animal communicator, horse expert, and a fellow business owner. So Ginny, what have you got to say about the gap?
Yeah. It's really easy to get stuck there. And I think this applies to everything, right? Business, animals, life, whatever. Whenever we identify that there's somewhere else we want to be, that's when we're in a gap, I think. And yeah, it's uncomfortable.
It's super uncomfortable. And I think that's a lot of the times why people end up giving up on striving, because of that discomfort. So I once read something and it was like, if you don't have any expectations, then you'll never be disappointed. And it's so very, very true, right? But it's also such a cop-out. My whole thing with performance coaching and working with people on mountain bikes and really working with myself in my business, I've really seen that when you identify with what it is you're wanting and step into that space, you really open yourself up for a lot of discomfort. And you also open yourself up for the fact that you've got to do the work. I read something this morning and it was like, anyone can be a great leader. You've just actually got to do the work to become the leader you want to be. And nothing that you really want to have happen in life happens without a little bit of hard work and a little bit of resistance. And you've got to be making those steps forward.
Yeah, 100%. Everything that you want is pretty much outside of your comfort zone. And we've talked before about the 4 phases of learning. And the first one is unconscious incompetence. So you don't know that you don't know. The second one is conscious incompetence, where you become aware that you don't know. And then followed by conscious competence and then unconscious competence. And the challenge is that those middle two, there's a really big space in the middle of there between figuring out you're suddenly aware that you don't know something and that you want to do something differently. Between there and being present with having to do that task, it's a long way. And depending on what you're trying to do, that distance can be really, really wide. And that's what the gap is. And the challenge is that frequently in the beginning, when you're working on a new skill, whatever that is, whether that's a physical skill in a sport or with your animals in training, or whether that's something more on the mental side in business work or even emotional intelligence skills, in the beginning, all you can feel is that you don't know and that you don't know how to do it. And it feels like it's not working. And so that struggle in the beginning is where we can quickly get mired in and then end up turning around and going back and being like, well, I'm just going to give up. And that's the spot where you've got to be able to sit with that discomfort in the gap in order to be able to keep making progress. And I loved what you brought up last week about the idea that you should be measuring based on where you've started and not on where you're going. I think that's key.
It's 100%. Yeah. If we're measuring against the ideal, then we're never going to get anywhere. We're just constantly going to feel like we're pushing a boulder up the hill, that we're stuck. And one of the things they said in the book I'm reading, 10x is easier than 2x, is that at the end of every day, if you're like, hey, these are the 3 wins that I have had during my day, and then you identify what are the 3 wins that I want to have tomorrow. And now we've got like a legit measuring stick. And actually, I found yesterday that I had 6 things. I'm not very good at following instructions. But it was like, how do I want to look at my day, right? I had a meeting at 9 o'clock. I had a meeting at 12. And then I had to take kids out for a bike ride. So they were like 3 things that I needed to be present for. And I showed up and they all went awesome. So those were 3 wins. But then I actually had time between those things. You know, in the middle of that, I got the podcast up yesterday. We were a little late, but I got it up. And there were some admin stuff I needed to do for work that happened. And I'm looking at my list here, and I got a MailChimp out, right? And so those were 3 more wins that I could be like, okay, so on the having to show up for meetings, I did this, but I actually did 3 things here. And then it was like, okay, so what is it that I want to have that I'm winning for tomorrow? And so then I'm setting up for that future vision. And I think this is where that future vision is so, so important. And when you do any sort of future visioning exercise, whether it's sitting down and being like, oh my God, my Thursday was absolutely unbelievable. This happened and this happened. And you write down all these things that you want to feel at the end of your day. Then you're able to walk into the next day being like, well, in order for me to feel like I want to feel, like I wrote down in my future vision, these are the steps that I'm going to have to take. And so it makes it easier. It really defines the action steps that you want to take. And in this book, they talk about if you're really lost in the 2x, if I just say, I want to lose 10 pounds. Like 10 pounds, it's not a big deal. It's kind of a 2x jump. But what about losing 10 pounds and also picking up a habit of running once a week or going to the gym or whatever it might be? Now the steps for doing that goal are a lot clearer than losing 10 pounds. I could just stop eating. I could do a 4-day fast. Probably blitz that really, really quickly. I could decide to not eat sugar for a week. There's a lot of different ways and it feels very overwhelming. Whereas when you get more defined into the parameters of that, it starts to be a bigger jump. You're actually going to have to change the person that you are right now in order for you to achieve those goals.
Yeah. We've talked a little bit before we hopped on the call. I turned Tosh onto YNAB, youneedabudget.com. We'll post a affiliate link in the comments for you guys if you're interested. But it's a fantastic budgeting tool. And she was complaining to me about some struggles that were going on. And so I'm like, well, you can do what I did and use this tool. And the challenge is, as with any tool that you start using, there's a learning curve. And when you have something like money or even physical habits or eating habits, that's something that is just a part of life. Like you can't escape that at all. We have to handle money somehow. It's just what we have to do. When you have something that's that much a part of the norm, I think it's even more challenging to work on making a change, especially one where you want to make something a real ultimate shift in your habits and your way of being in life. So with money, that means how you spend, how you track, how you're aware of spending at all. And when you start out, there's always a huge gap. It's no different when you're talking about fitness goals or dietary goals. In the beginning, there's always a really big gap, right? From where you are to where you want to be. And because these things are things that are such a part of our normal everyday life, it takes a long time to make those changes, to make them cumulative enough to get to your ideal. But what's important is to look at where you came from. And that is the biggest part of the story that is so important.
Yeah, for sure. And, YNAB, I set it up. I've definitely not using the tool to its full capacity. And what YNAB is, it's an app. It's on your phone. It's also on the computer. And the idea is that daily, weekly, monthly, somewhere in there, you're going in and you are updated. It's linked to your bank accounts, and you're going up and you're categorizing things. And then going forward, you can start to track. So when you're like, well, where did all my money go? I made all this money and I don't know where it is. You can look at YNAB and be like, oh, okay, well, actually, I'm getting paid $2,000 a month, and $1,000 of that is going to my car payment, and $500 of that is going to my rent, and $500 is going to make groceries. So if I'm actually wanting to spend any more money on top of that, that's not money that I actually have. And when you see that, you're able to go, oh, there's a gap here. And this is why I'm accumulating the debt that I am accumulating, because I'm literally $1,000 over every month. Because right now I don't have enough money to even take care of the basics. And when you can start to look at, and that was an example, by the way, just to be clear, I'm making up my numbers here. I'm not living somewhere where $500 a month is a realistic rent. Although when I'm living in my camper, there are campgrounds I can stay in for $500 a month. But that was a big part of our decision to move into our camper, was we could either take our camper and go to Mexico, because when we looked at it coming out of COVID, we were like, we're $1,000 over every month to just be making these ends meet. So how are we going to shift this? And when you've got a tool like YNAB, it's like, yeah, so right now I'm in the gap because I'm figuring it out. I have not reached the ideal where all my debts are paid off and everything is smooth and amazing. But I could also look at it being in the gain, that I am only a couple of weeks behind in updating that app and being able to see where things are going. And where I was headed with that is that you can put all your categories in, and then it's really easy to extract the data. And money is just energy. Everything is just data. And if you start to look at any problem like, okay, this is just data, and I'm just moving myself from one place to another. It's kind of like if you're on a countrywide trip and your goal is to get from British Columbia to Maryland, and you get stuck in Colorado, you're kind of stuck in the gap.
That is true. I think the other thing to comment on is the fact that YNAB is a tool. And really, your goal is about your financial security and the way you handle money. And YNAB is the tool that's going to get you through the gap and out the other side. And this is not necessarily a commercial for YNAB by any stretch of the imagination, but that's the key, is having the tools. And if you don't have a tool in your toolbox that can help you assess where you are, where you're beginning, and then keep track of those gains along the way, then you will always feel like you're never really moving, because you don't have any way to measure where you've come from at that point. And even writing down your 3 things at the end of the day, or whatever it is, you need a tool to be able to work with that's going to help you know where you are along the pathway, and the fact that you actually have made progress. Because majority of the time, we've made more progress than we're aware of, but we just can't measure it and we can't quantify it. And sometimes that can be hard with things that are not as tangible as, say, losing weight, or as, okay, I want to make sure that I'm cooking this percentage of meals at home, or with this percentage of vegetables, or that I'm eating this every day. When you don't have something like that that's tangible, it can be a lot more difficult to be aware of where you are and to figure out how you're able to move forward. The gap can really drag you down. I mean, that's like the thickest of the weeds that you can get tangled up in, I think, when you're trying to make progress towards a goal. But the other part about it is that if you focus too hard on your ideal and you don't actually set an ideal and then work on that specifically, frequently you can end up moving the bar. And you're never going to make it, because the bar is always continually moving away from you. And you're never going to really make consistent progress because you don't have that end picture clearly in your mind that is stable and grounded for you. So how do you know when you got there at that point? How do you know when you've ended the gap? How do you know when you've gotten to the other side at that point?
Well, yeah, and the destination always changes. Back to my trip across the country, I'm going to get to Maryland and then I'm going to be like, okay, well, I got here. Now where am I going? Because that wasn't my that was my first destination, right? And so we really, as humans, we are really, really good at just getting stuck. What they say is that we overestimate what we can do in a year and we underestimate what we can do in 5 to 10 years. And when we just start measuring our progress one day at a time, like today, my 3 goals, one of them is to do the podcast. Another is to put some Facebook ads up. And I can't remember what my third one is. Actually, it was to get some emails out of my inbox. I will know at the end of the day, if I've done those 3 things, I achieved the 3 most important things. I will know that I have done something. Now, if I did a bunch of other things as well, bonus points for me. But I'm working with an online learning platform right now, and you have your XPs, which are the essential points you have to get that show you that you are moving through the course and you're doing the key course tasks in order to see the result of the online course that you're doing. And then you get XXPs that are bonus points. So if you do these exercises as well, then you're going to see even more results. That's kind of I did my 3 things, I get my 1 XP, and I did 3 more things, so I get a bonus point at the end of the week. I'm going to be able to measure very clearly how I did. And I think what is worth saying here too is being like, this makes things really reasonable. Because you really can only do 3 big things in a day. And if your big goal is to lose weight, one of those big things is moving your body. What did you do to move your body today? And I was listening to a podcast yesterday, and it was talking about how you can change your health in 6 days. So somebody who is really struggling, you can literally change all of your markers by taking these sort of very few steps. I think it was 10 things that you can do to completely transform your health in, it was either 6 or 10 days. And it was as simple as move your body. And he's like, you don't have to start becoming a marathon runner. Like, just do 10 minutes of yoga every day. You know, don't eat anything that comes out of a box for a week. You can do anything for a week. Little things, they weren't big. And they were easily measurable. And just doing those things will change everything. And whether you're talking about your health, whether you're talking about your money, whether you're talking about your business goals, let's talk about mountain biking. If you want to be a better mountain biker, one of the key things that you want to do is every time you go out for a bike ride, you need to pick one thing that you're going to work on. Today, I am going to be focusing on my cornering technique. Everything else I'm doing, that's fun. But when I get to corners, I'm going to be very consistent, and I'm going to think about what's my line going up, what's my line coming down. I'm going to think about my body position in the corners. I'm going to think about whether I'm rotating. I'm going to think about those key things that I have been told that are skills to make my cornering better. And you've probably chosen a trail that has lots of corners in it. If you go out on a trail that's like really long and there's lots of flow sections, well, you're going to focus on being more in flow. And when you get to the corners, that's not your focus. You're not thinking about your cornering technique. You're really thinking about the flow, because you cannot think about all of the things at once. And when you get to the end of the ride, you're able to say, hey, yeah, I intentionally improved in this one area. And that's how you get better at mountain biking. You pick one thing to work on. And that's your 10,000 hours. If you go out for 10,000 hours and every time you go out, you are intentional about what you are doing, you will see progress. If you just go out, turn your brain on, and just do the same thing badly over and over again, you will see no progress and you will be completely stuck in the gap. the entire time, no matter what activity you are in.
Yeah, you were commenting that we overestimate how much we can get done in a certain time frame. I think most people tend to overestimate how much they can take on in a day or in a short-term time frame. I've been in business coaching things now for basically over 10 years, and I always love it when people come in and they're like, okay, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this and I'm going to post on social media like 6 times a day, and I'm going to be on this platform and that platform, and I'm going to write blog posts and newsletters, and the list goes on and on and on and on and on. And I'm like, well, I know I can't do that. That's not happening. I clearly know myself well enough now to know that those kinds of lists will set me up for failure. Guaranteed way for me to bog down in the gap is to give myself too many things to manage and too many pieces of the goal to work on at any one time. And I think that's what I love about your working on the mountain biking. Just focus on one aspect of what you are working on and do that well, and then shift gears and focus on something else. And if we try and take on too much in the middle of our goals, then that's how you literally just sit in the gap, is because you're trying to juggle more than your brain, more than your body can handle at any given time, and you won't feel successful because there'll be too many unchecked boxes at the end of the day. I would rather have a small goal and blow the roof off of that with 4 or 5 extra things that I did for the day than give myself a list of 10 and only complete 2. We tend to grossly overestimate how quickly we can get something done. Now, I see this in business. I do the same thing all the time. Oh yeah, it'll only take me 30 minutes to write a blog post. Yeah, hour and a half later, I'm still not done. Eventually, yes, I should be able to do that in 30 minutes with no problem. That's not a big deal. But in the beginning, we tend to completely estimate wrong how efficiently we can get things done. And again, keeps us trapped in the gap. And so giving yourself a smaller goal on that daily basis is going to help you feel more successful, which is going to help move the needle forward towards your ideal in a much more efficient way than ending up setting yourself up to fail with a to-do list or goals that are too long and too complicated. And yeah, sure, I'd love to be able to check off all 10 things in a day, but it doesn't happen. Maybe someday I'll have the stamina to do that. Maybe someday I'll have the stamina to be able to juggle corners and flow and all the things all at the same time. But we're not there yet. So baby steps.
But here's the truth is, in order to be more successful, you want to do less. In order to 10x your life in any area, the key is to do less. Because then you have more focus, you have more energy, and you do everything that you're doing with more quality. So when we want to progress in our life, we start with identifying, this is where I am, this is where I want to be. Now, what are the steps that I am going to take on a daily basis that are going to move me there? And I can do 3 things in a day that will actually have all my focus, all my intention, and then I will have the capacity and I will have the energy to do everything well. And if we do not follow that strategy, we will burn out. We will be frustrated. We will give up. And this is said 100 different ways in 100 different books, in 100 different seminars. The Trinont Leadership Seminar is on this weekend in Provo, and they will have 3 days of speakers that will say the exact thing that I just said. Identify where you are right now, identify where your goal is that you want to get to, and now figure out on your daily basis. Reach out to 5 people a day and see if they're interested in what you're selling. And then reach out again and reach out again. And if you just take 3 simple steps every single day towards whatever it is you're wanting to achieve, you will win. You're wanting to lose weight? Step number 1, move your body. Step number 2, eat something healthy. Take one thing out that is not good for you and replace it with something else. Just one. Do everything else exactly the same and just change one thing. And then the third one is probably get a good amount of sleep. And if you did those 3 things every day for a week, you will see changes. It's that simple.
Yeah.
And it's not easy. Because if you're not used to moving and doing 15 minutes of a walk after dinner or yoga or whatever it is, it will be hard and you won't want to do it. But if you've given yourself 10 things that you need to do, and one of them is I'm going to start running and I'm going to run for half an hour every day. It's day 2 is going to be way harder than day 1, and you're probably not going to do day 3.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. You're not going to get there. And this is really an issue of quality over quantity at that point. Because if you're doing things with quality, then that makes up for any kind of quantity that you lack and or that you would be doing poorly. Years ago, when I first got my horse, some months, the only exercise and work he got was a lesson once a month because I was juggling a full-time job. I was juggling managing chores in the barn several nights a week, which took a couple hours. And I was just juggling my own energy levels. And the lesson was all we would get. And yet we still made progress. Yes, not as much as if we could have worked multiple days in a week, but we made progress. And he didn't backslide and I didn't backslide. And that alone was enough to keep us moving in a positive direction. And sometimes I think we set ourselves up for failure when we try to make that I want to run 30 minutes a day goal. But yet we can't really even run 10 minutes effectively at this point. So why don't you just start with 10 minutes? Start where you are. There's already an episode on that one. Start where you are and keep building on that. But frequently we want to jump to somewhere else already. I want to eat 10 servings of vegetables in a day. Like, well, if you're not eating 2, 10 is going to be a really big stretch. And so if you're trying to make too much of a leap, the quality is going to matter so much more than the quantity at that point. And you'll find yourself far more successful. And you'll find yourself working through the gap instead of getting bogged down in it.
Yeah, and you'll be in the game because you will be able to see every little bit of progress that starts to happen. So to wrap up these thoughts, really, yes, sit down. What are you wanting to achieve in your life? What are you wanting to achieve in your mountain biking? What are you wanting to achieve with your animals? What are you wanting to achieve with your horses? Where is your business at? Where is your personal life at? Take a stock take of where you're at right now and then figure out your ideal. A great way of doing that is by sitting down and writing your future vision for a month from now, 6 months from now, a year from now. Pick a time frame and write out, oh my goodness, you cannot believe. I listened to this podcast called Riding in the Weeds 6 months ago. And since then, this, and this, and list the wants so big and so broad that your brain is like, there's no possible way that any of this could come true. Make it big. And then look at what you've written and go, okay, this is my ideal. Come back to where you are right now and say, what are the 3 steps? What are my 3 wins for tomorrow that I am going to take? At the end of tomorrow, these are the 3 things I'm going to say that I've won. And then at the end of the day, you say, what were my 3 wins from today? And what are my 3 wins for tomorrow? And do that for 30 days and see the progress that you make. But more importantly, notice how you feel. And you may need to sit down and write a list of your 10 wants before you write your future vision, because often we are too scared to write down, I want this, I want that, I want this, because we feel like if we were to tell someone what we want, they'd be like, well, why do you want that? That's not reasonable. You're like, yeah, it's not reasonable. It's just something that I want. And when we identify with things that we are unreasonably desiring, then we start to be able to take ourselves out of this feeling of being stuck in the mud and start to actually make steps. And then we realize that those people that we look around and see outside of us and go, wow, I can't believe that person has achieved XYZ in such a short period of time. It's because they were unreasonable. They set themselves up for something that they could ultimately fail so badly at, and they risked it all, and they just took 3 steps towards it. And from the outside, we're like, wow, that person's so lucky. And they're not lucky. They just set themselves an end goal, and they measured their progress instead of measuring themselves up against, I'm not there yet. And that's all I have to say.
I love it. I think it's perfect.
Do you have any final thoughts on that, Ginny?
How do I follow that up, Tosh? Really? Come on now. No, it's quality over quantity. Every day, if you're willing to put in the work every day with compassion for yourself and kindness towards yourself and willing to stay present with what you want, then that's how you'll get somewhere big. But most people don't take the time to do that on a daily basis. I certainly know that I'm guilty of not being present on a daily basis with it, but that's why we have these conversations, because these are also projects we're working on. You're still working through your YNAB journey. I'm still working on a lot of other journeys and processes and things. And that's part of why we do what we do, is because we have each other to lean on. And that's part of reminding each other of how to get back out of the gap again.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving forward. And I think I just want to bring up randomly, before we jumped on the call here today, we were looking at our statistics for this podcast. And one of the things that we often wonder is, like, who are our listeners? So if you have made it this far in the episode and you're listening to us, we would love to hear from you. We would love to know who you are. We'd love to know, what are you up to in life? What are your dreams? What are the things that you want to have happen? And where are you getting stuck? Where are you like killing it and not being stuck at all, and things are just absolutely thriving for you? And what do you think of our conversations? If you've stuck with us all the way to the end of the episode, then there's obviously something here for you, and we would love to meet you. We would just love to know who you are. So leave us a review, send us an email, connect with us in some way.
Yeah, we promise we're real people. We don't bite.
And we love bringing this podcast to the world. And one of our ideals and one of our things is, how can we improve? How can we make the podcast better? How can we get it out to more people? How can we make more space? And our next project is a 6-week program to help you get unstuck. We've looked at all the different things that we've talked about over the last 49 episodes. And there are certain things that get you stuck. And then what are the tools that we've learned that help you unstick for those particular things? We don't actually have a name for it right now. I'm calling it getting unstuck, riding out of the weeds. We've got a few things that we've been throwing around. And the idea is that we're all in this journey together. We're all human. And there are some really easy tools. No, I should say simple tools. But it's never easy, because if it was easy, everyone would be doing it. And if you're listening to us, you're obviously someone who is wanting more from the life that you're experiencing. And you're really interested in moving from the gap to the gain. And that's what we're going to help you do. So stay tuned for more as Ginny and I work towards creating some really, really cool. After our episode 50, we've got a whole plan. So stay tuned. I am Natasha Lockey. I am a performance, life, and mountain bike coach. I am here to help you with everything I was just talking about. If you've got some goals with your mountain biking, whether you're close by me and you want to do something in person, or you want to work with me online, I can help you move through your life goals. I can help you move through your biking goals. And it's all about really just identifying where we are right now and creating a plan, getting the skills, using the tools, and moving us to that goal that we're wanting to have. Because when you are performing, you have more confidence. If you do not have the skills to perform or feel like you can perform well, then you will not have confidence. Confidence is not something that is generated so much as it is built from the skills and the steps and the things that we do. We create the muscle. So you can find me at Betty Go Hard on Instagram. You can find me on Facebook, Natasha Lockey, and LinkedIn, I am Natasha Lockey. So what about you, Ginny?
Yeah, I'm Ginny Branden. I'm an animal communicator and energy healer for animals and their people too. And I'm going to be able to help you if you are having relationship challenges or emotional challenges with your pets. And if you would like to know more information from your pet about their perspective on life and the challenges that you're facing together, please hit me up and let me know. You can find me on the web at soulpetconnections.com and on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube under the same handle. So thank you so much for joining us here today. You can find the podcast on ridingintheweeds.com and on all major podcast platforms. As Tosh said, we would love to hear from you, and please leave us likes, comments, shares, and reviews, especially on Apple. We would love to have your input on future episodes. If you want to hear us talk about something, hit us up and let us know. So thank you so much for being with us today. We enjoyed having you and sending you all the love, and we will see you next time.
Thank you so much. Have an amazing day, people. We'll talk to you soon.